I still remember the way Ethan smiled that morning, bright, rehearsed, almost too perfect. He stood in my kitchen, holding a shiny brochure with pictures of a blue lake and happy families splashing in sunlight. "Mom," he said, "you've worked all your life. You need a real vacation. I'm taking care of everything." I laughed at first. "You? Planning a vacation?" He chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. "You think I can't?" There was something in his eyes that day, a mix of charm and calculation. But I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that after all these years, my son finally saw me as more than the woman who cooked, cleaned, and signed checks. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Ethan said the trip would be special. Just him, Claire, the kids, and me. "You deserve to relax for once, Mom. Let me handle everything." I nodded, smiling through the ache in my chest. "All right, son. I'll trust you." It felt good saying that. I'll trust you. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my old suitcase, the one I hadn't used since my husband died. I folded my best dress, my favorite scarf, and the framed photo of Ethan as a boy, the one where he's missing a front tooth and holding my hand at the park. For years, I had been the one fixing things. When his business fell apart, I used my retirement savings to help him get back on his feet. When Claire left him once, I was the one who begged her to return. "He just needs time," I'd said. I gave him time, money, forgiveness, everything. So when he promised me this vacation, I wanted to believe it was his way of saying thank you. The next morning, I made pancakes for the kids. Claire barely looked up from her phone. "We'll leave early Saturday," Ethan said, sipping his coffee. "Just pack light." I asked, "What about the tickets, the booking?" He waved his hand. "Handled. You just need to show up." His confidence made me uneasy, but I swallowed my doubts, the way mothers often do. Later that day, I went to the bank to withdraw some cash for the trip. The teller smiled at me. "Big vacation, Mrs. Miller?" "Yes," I said softly. "My son planned it." "Oh, that's wonderful," she replied. Her words should have made me proud. Instead, they made my stomach twist. Friday night, the house was buzzing with energy. The kids ran around shouting about swimming pools and ice cream. Claire double-checked her makeup in the mirror. Ethan loaded suitcases into the car. I walked into his room to hand him his jacket and overheard him on the phone. "Yeah, she thinks it's just a trip," he whispered. "Once she's settled, we'll transfer everything. I'll explain later." My hands went cold. I almost dropped the jacket. Transfer what? I backed away quietly, my heart pounding so loud I thought he could hear it. I told myself I must have misheard. Maybe he was talking about work. Ethan had a small real estate business, always juggling accounts and loans. That had to be it. But as I folded the jacket and placed it by the door, a quiet voice inside me said, "Don't be naive again." Still, I silenced it. Because mothers do that. We choose love over logic, even when it hurts. The morning of the trip, Ethan honked the car horn like an impatient teenager. "Come on, Mom. We'll be late." I rushed out, clutching my purse, my heart racing with excitement and fear. The car smelled of new leather and perfume. Claire smiled politely. The kids cheered when I got in. "Grandma's coming." The drive took hours. We passed highways, small towns, then dirt roads. I waited for the grand resort to appear, the one from the brochure, but instead, we pulled up to a lonely cabin surrounded by trees. I frowned. "Ethan, where's the resort?" He smiled nervously. "Change of plans, Mom. The lake's nearby. This place is more private, perfect for family time." Private. That word stuck to my skin like humidity. The cabin was dusty and half-furnished. The fridge was empty. Claire muttered, "This wasn't the deal." Ethan whispered something to her, and she went silent. I stood by the doorway, staring at the cobwebs, the peeling paint. I wanted to ask questions, but the children's laughter softened me. Maybe this was all temporary. Maybe tomorrow we'd drive to the lake. I wanted to believe that. I always did. That evening we had sandwiches for dinner. Ethan used my card to grab groceries. I didn't say a word when he asked for the PIN. He was my son. Why wouldn't I trust him? As night fell, I sat outside on the porch. The forest hummed with crickets. I thought about my husband, how proud he'd been when Ethan graduated. "He'll take care of you one day," he used to say. I smiled sadly at the sky. "You were wrong, John," I whispered. "I'm still taking care of him." Inside, I heard Ethan laughing. I peeked through the window. He was on his phone again. "Don't worry, it's handled," he said quietly. "She won't even notice." My chest tightened. Who was she? The next morning, I made breakfast. Claire avoided eye contact, her voice sharp when she spoke to me. "Ethan said we might extend the stay," she muttered. "Extend? For how long?" She shrugged. "He'll explain." When Ethan finally appeared, he looked exhausted but excited. "Mom, I need to handle some paperwork while we're here. It's nothing big. I might need to use your laptop for a bit." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course, honey." But something in his tone felt practiced. I watched him work, not typing emails, but logging into accounts. My accounts. "Ethan," I said softly, "what are you doing?" He froze. "Just updating some details, Mom. You wouldn't understand." "Then explain it to me." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Mom, please, don't start. You said you did trust me." His words hit me like a slap. I had said that, and he was using it against me. By the third day, the air in that cabin felt heavy. Claire barely spoke. The kids were restless. Ethan was glued to his phone, whispering in corners. I felt like an outsider in my own family. That evening, I walked to the nearby store, a mile away, just to get some air. When I tried to pay for a bottle of water, my card declined. "Try again," I told the cashier, embarrassed. He tried. Declined again. I used another card. Declined. The world around me blurred. My throat went dry. When I got back to the cabin, Ethan was sitting on the porch pretending to scroll. "Everything okay, Mom?" he asked casually. I clenched my purse. "My cards aren't working." He didn't look up. "Oh, banks sometimes freeze them when you travel. I'll check for you later." Something in me snapped. "Ethan, look at me." He sighed and met my eyes. Eyes I'd once seen filled with innocence, now shadowed with guilt. "What did you do?" I whispered. He stood up, his voice calm but cold. "Relax, Mom. I just moved some money around. It's still yours. I'm just managing it better." "Managing it?" I repeated, trembling. "You took everything?" He looked away. "It's temporary. You'll thank me later." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The boy I'd raised, the man I'd trusted, was now a stranger. "Ethan," I said, my voice shaking, "how could you?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Because you never stopped controlling me. This is my turn, Mom. My turn to lead." His words cut deeper than any knife. That night I couldn't breathe. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my empty wallet, the useless cards, the woman in the mirror who looked like a ghost of herself. I remembered all the times I'd bailed him out, defended him, loved him without limits, and now he had drained not just my savings, but my faith. Claire knocked softly. "He went to town," she whispered. I turned to her. "Did you know?" Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't answer, just looked away. That silence was my answer. I packed my bag quietly. One dress, one photo, my phone. As I zipped it shut, I heard my husband's voice in my head. "Take care of yourself, May." For the first time, I realized I never had. At dawn, I stepped outside. The sky was pale, the air still. I left the house key on the table and walked down the dirt road. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. I kept walking until the cabin disappeared behind me. Each step hurt, but it was a pain that felt alive, not trapped. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anyone, explaining myself, or waiting to be loved. I was simply leaving. When the bus finally came into view, I sat on the bench and exhaled. My hands shook as I opened my phone, checking the bank app again. $70,000. Gone. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I whispered, "You took my money, Ethan, but you won't take my soul." As the bus doors opened, I stepped inside, alone, heartbroken, but free in a way I hadn't been since the day I became a mother. The bus rattled down the lonely road as I clutched my purse like it was the only thing left of me. I didn't know where I was going, just that I needed to be far away from that cabin, far away from Ethan. My hands trembled with anger and disbelief. My own son had stolen from me. My baby boy. When I finally got back to town, I didn't go home right away. I sat at a diner by the highway, staring at my reflection in the greasy window. I looked like a woman who'd been emptied, not just of money, but of purpose. I whispered to myself, why would he do this to me? The waitress poured me coffee. "You okay, ma'am?" I forced a smile. "Just tired. Long trip." She walked away, and I opened my banking app again. Still frozen. $70,000 gone. The number blinked at me like a cruel joke. When I closed my eyes, I could still hear Ethan's voice from the night before. "Relax, Mom. You'll thank me later." Thank him? For stealing my life's savings? I gripped my cup so tight I thought it would crack. I couldn't go to the police. He was my son. How do you report your own child? I went home that afternoon. The house felt like a stranger's. Quiet, cold, too clean. His laughter still echoed in the walls. I looked at the empty photo frame on the mantel, the one that used to hold our family picture before he'd borrowed it for the trip. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Ethan, Mom, don't make this a big deal. I just borrowed the money. I'll return it soon." Me. "You lied to me. You used me." Ethan. "Stop being dramatic. You always said we're family." Family. That word suddenly felt like poison. For 2 days, I couldn't eat or sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. Smiling, lying, taking. By the 3rd day, I decided to go back to the cabin. Not to see him, but to understand how far he was willing to go. When I arrived, the place looked abandoned. The porch light flickered. Claire was sitting outside, smoking. She looked startled when she saw me. "Where's Ethan?" I asked. She hesitated. "He's gone to town." "Gone where?" She sighed. "I don't know, May. He said he needed to handle some paperwork." I stepped closer. "Claire, did you know what he did with my money?" Her eyes filled with tears. "He said it was a loan. He promised he'd fix things." "Fix what?" I asked sharply. "Our debts," she whispered. "He was drowning, May. You're the only one he thought could save him." I stared at her. "By stealing from me?" She broke down crying. "He's desperate. He said you'd never understand." I turned away, my chest burning. "No, Claire. I understand too well. I've been saving him all his life." That night, I stayed in the casen, an empty cabin. It smelled of damp wood and broken promises. I sat in the same chair where he'd told me everything was under control. I replayed our life together in my head, all the times I'd covered his mistakes. When he dropped out of college, I sold my jewelry to pay his debts. When his business failed, I mortgaged my home. Every time I said the same thing. "It's okay, Ethan. You'll make it right." But this time, something inside me broke. I realized I wasn't helping him anymore. I was enabling him. I wasn't a mother. I was a safety net he never stopped jumping on. The next morning, I confronted him. He came back with groceries and that same easy smile. "Mom, you're back!" "Don't pretend to be happy," I said coldly. He laughed nervously. "Come on, don't start again." I stepped closer. "You took $70,000 from me, Ethan, without asking. You lied about this vacation. You lied about everything." His face hardened. "I said it's temporary." "Temporary?" I snapped. "You drained my savings, my retirement, everything I had left. Do you even care what that does to me?" He crossed his arms. "I care about my family. I did what I had to do." "I am your family," I shouted. Or does that stop counting when I say no to you?" He smirked, and that broke me even more. "You always make me the villain, Mom. Maybe if you'd believed in me more, I wouldn't have to do this." I stared at him in disbelief. "Don't you dare blame me for your greed." He turned away, muttering, "You'll never get it." I left the cabin again, but this time I didn't run. I walked slowly, calmly, every step heavier but clearer. By the time I reached the bus station, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't plead. I would act. Back home, I started making calls. I spoke to the bank manager, explained the situation carefully without mentioning my son's name. "There's been unauthorized access," I said. "I need to freeze all joint accounts immediately." The manager hesitated. "Do you have proof?" "Yes," I said, my voice trembling, and a broken heart full of it. He froze my accounts within the hour. I changed my passwords, canceled cards, and reported suspicious transfers. Then I opened the safe, the one Ethan never knew about, and took out my husband's old files. He had left me the house, the insurance, the documents I'd always kept untouched. Ethan had no claim to them. For the first time, I wasn't thinking like a mother. I was thinking like a survivor. 3 days later, Ethan showed up at my doorstep. He looked furious. "Why'd you block everything? My accounts are frozen." I looked him straight in the eye. "Because they're not your accounts." "You can't do this to me," he shouted. "I already did," I said calmly. He stepped closer. "You've ruined me, Mom. I had a plan." I felt my hands shaking, but I stood firm. "You had a scam, Ethan. Not a plan." He clenched his fists. "You think you're better than me?" I took a deep breath. "No, Ethan. I just finally think of me." He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Maybe he didn't. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I sank to the floor, tears spilling down my cheeks. The next morning, I got a call from Claire. Her voice was trembling. "May, he's gone." "What do you mean?" "He left. Took the car, took what little cash we had. I don't know where he went." I closed my eyes. The pain hit like a wave, not just of loss, but of finality. For years, I had feared losing my son, but the truth was, I'd lost him long before this. I'd just been pretending he was still mine. Days turned into weeks. I lived quietly, waiting for news. Each day without a call was both torture and relief. One evening, I got an email, short, cold, and final. "Don't worry about me, Mom. I'll figure it out. Stop meddling in my life. I'll pay you back when I can." I read it twice, and deleted it. I whispered to myself, "No, Ethan, you already paid me," with the truth. Life after that felt strange. The house was quiet but not empty. I started noticing things I'd ignored before: the sunlight through the curtains, the smell of fresh coffee, the soft hum of peace. But peace is never free. It costs pain, it costs love, it costs every illusion you once held. I kept asking myself, where did I go wrong? And then one morning, I found the answer in the mirror. I'd raised him to believe love meant rescue. That no matter how far he fell, I'd be there to catch him. But love isn't rescue. It's respect. And once that's gone, everything else breaks. A week later, Claire showed up with the kids. She looked exhausted. "May," she said softly, "can we stay for a while?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Of course." The children ran inside, giggling. Their laughter filled the house like sunlight after a storm. That night, Claire sat across from me at the kitchen table. "He called me once," she said. "He's ashamed, but he's also angry." I nodded slowly. "He needs to find himself, Claire. But I can't be part of that journey anymore." She wiped her tears. "I'm so sorry, May." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Don't be. We all have to wake up sometime." Later that night, I sat on the porch, listening to the crickets again. The same sound that once reminded me of loneliness now felt like freedom. I thought of that cabin, the fake vacation, the lies, the betrayal, and realized it had been the best journey of my life. Not because it was beautiful, but because it opened my eyes. The vacation wasn't a trip. It was an awakening. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to save me. I had already saved myself. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the empty suitcase that was supposed to be filled with memories. Instead, it was filled with silence, the kind of silence that screams inside your head. By morning, my eyes were swollen, but I told myself I'd keep calm. I wanted answers, and I wanted them today. When my son came into the kitchen, whistling as if nothing had happened, I felt something inside me twist. "Good morning, Mom," he said lightly, pouring coffee. I forced a smile. "Good morning. How was the vacation?" He froze. The mug in his hand stopped midair. "What do you mean?" I kept my voice steady. "I mean the vacation you didn't take me on, the one you lied about." His eyes darted away. "Mom, it's not what you think." I let out a bitter laugh. "Then tell me, what should I think? You told me we were going to Florida. I packed. I waited. Then you disappeared. Your sister showed me the pictures. You went with your wife's family." He rubbed his face. "It was her parents' idea. They paid for everything. I couldn't say no." I stared at him. "You couldn't say no, but you could lie to me?" He sighed. "You wouldn't have understood." That sentence cut deeper than anything, because I had always understood. Every sacrifice, every disappointment, every moment he turned away. I whispered, "You think I wouldn't understand being left out by my own child?" He didn't answer. He just stood there, staring at the floor, like a boy caught doing something shameful. I felt my hands trembling. The air was thick with tension. "You know," I said softly, "when your father left, I promised myself I'd never let this family fall apart. I worked 2 jobs. I ate leftovers so you could eat fresh. I sold my jewelry to pay your tuition. I stayed strong for you. But you—" My voice broke. "You lied to me for a vacation." He looked at me, guilt flashing across his face, but then pride returned. "Mom, you're being dramatic. It was just a trip." I almost couldn't believe he said it. Just a trip? It was trust. It was respect. He put the mug down hard. "You always make everything about you." Those words hit like a slap. I felt my knees weaken, but I didn't fall. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. "You're right," I said slowly. "Maybe it's time I do make something about me." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. I just turned away, because if I stayed another second, my tears would betray me. That evening, I went through my drawers, searching for my old bank book. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. Years of saving, every penny meant for him, for his future, his comfort. $70,000. I had always told myself it was love. But maybe it was control disguised as care. Maybe I had built a cage for myself, one made of good intentions. When I saw the balance, something in me cracked open. All those years, and for what? To be lied to, left behind, treated like a burden? I sat on the floor, tears streaming down my face. I whispered to myself, "No more." I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I went to the bank. The teller smiled politely as I handed her the withdrawal slip. She looked surprised when she saw the amount. "Are you sure, ma'am?" I nodded. "Yes, every dollar." As I walked out of that bank with the check in my hand, I felt lighter, terrified, but lighter. That afternoon, my son called. "Mom, are you still upset?" I took a deep breath. "I'm not upset. I'm just done." "Done? What does that mean?" "It means," I said quietly, "I'm done begging for respect. I'm done financing your comfort while I drown in loneliness. The savings account is closed." He was silent for a moment. Then he laughed. A dry, nervous laugh. "Mom, don't be ridiculous. That's my future money." I replied, "No, that was my past forgiveness." "Mom, you can't do that. I'm your son." "Exactly," I said. "And maybe one day you'll understand what that should have meant." He hung up. I stood there for a long time, the phone still in my hand, feeling my heart ache and heal at the same time. The next few days were strange. Quiet, almost peaceful. I cooked for myself. I sat on the porch, and for the first time in years, I didn't check my phone waiting for his messages. But guilt tried to creep in. Every night that small voice whispered, "You're being cruel. He's your boy." And every night I reminded myself, "No, I'm being honest. Finally honest." Still, part of me broke when his wife showed up at my door 3 days later. She looked nervous, clutching her purse. "Mom?" she said softly. "Can we talk?" I nodded, though my heart pounded. She sat across from me. "I know you're angry, but please don't punish him like this. He didn't mean to hurt you." I smiled sadly. "Didn't mean to?" He lied. "He chose to hide me because I don't fit in with your family's perfect pictures." She looked down. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it?" I asked. "Because I've been humiliated enough times to know when I'm being erased." Tears filled her eyes. "He's scared, that's all. He thinks you judge him." "Judge him?" I said quietly. "I raised him. I bled for him. I never judged him. I only wanted to be loved the way I loved him." She started crying. "Please talk to him. He's miserable." I took a long breath. "I will. But this time, I'll talk on my terms." That night, I called him. When he answered, his voice was cold. "What do you want, Mom?" "I want you to listen," I said. "For once, just listen." He didn't interrupt, so I continued. "You think this is about money. It's not. It's about what that money represented. My loyalty, my belief in you. You broke that, and when you lie to someone who loves you like that, something dies." He stayed quiet. I could hear his breathing. I added, "You know what the real breaking point was? It wasn't the vacation. It was realizing I've been begging for a seat at my own family's table." He whispered, "Mom." But I stopped him. "Don't say anything. Just know that I love you. But I can't keep shrinking to fit into your world. If that means you hate me for a while, so be it." And for the first time in my life, I hung up first. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I made coffee, opened the window, and let the cold air hit my face. It felt like freedom, sharp, real, undeniable. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's mother, someone's helper, someone's wallet. I felt like me. I decided to do something I'd been afraid to do for decades: live. I used part of that money to book a small cabin by the lake, just for a week. No calls, no guilt, no explaining, just me and the quiet I'd earned. When I arrived, the sun was setting. The water shimmered like liquid gold. I stood there, breathing, and whispered to myself, "This is what peace feels like." That night, I slept like a child. No tears, no ache, only release. But peace doesn't stay hidden for long. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Dozens of missed calls from my son. Then a message. "Mom, I'm coming to see you. Please don't go anywhere." My heart raced. Was he angry? Regretful? I didn't know. Hours later, his car pulled into the cabin driveway. He looked different, tired, pale. He got out slowly and stood a few feet away from me. "Mom," he said, voice shaking. "I'm sorry. I didn't move. I just watched him." "Sorry for what?" "For everything," he whispered. "I thought I was protecting you, but I was protecting myself. I didn't want my wife to see how much I still depend on you. I thought it made me weak." Tears filled my eyes. Depending on love doesn't make you weak. Pretending it doesn't exist does. He stepped closer. "Can we start over?" I looked at him, my grown boy, finally humble, finally human, and said softly, "We can. but it won't be like before. I'm not the same woman who gave without limits. I'm learning to keep some love for myself." He nodded. "I understand." For the first time in years, we hugged. Really hugged. And in that moment, I knew the breaking point wasn't the end. It was the beginning. When he left that night, I stayed by the lake. The moon reflected on the water, and I thought about everything: the lies, the pain, the courage it took to stop waiting for change and become the change myself. My heart still hurt, but it beat stronger. Sometimes, breaking is the only way to rebuild. When my son's car disappeared down the dusty road that night, I just stood there, staring at the taillights fading into darkness. My arms still felt heavy from that hug, my heart too. For a few moments I believed maybe things could change, maybe this was our fresh start. But peace has a strange way of testing you, right when you start trusting it. 3 days later, I got a call from the bank. "Mrs. Collins," the voice said, "we noticed a large transaction attempt from your joint account with your son. Can we confirm this with you?" I froze. My voice trembled. "What transaction?" $70,000, she said politely. "A transfer request from your son's side. We just need authorization." For a second the world went silent. My stomach twisted. "Cancel it," I said. "Immediately. Cancel it now." I hung up, my hand shaking so bad the phone nearly slipped. I had closed the savings account, yes, but one old joint account had remained open, the one we used when he first moved out. I'd forgotten it still existed. I sat down, feeling the walls spin. After everything, after that apology, he still tried to take what wasn't his. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My body shook with anger and disbelief. He had cried in front of me, said he was sorry. But maybe those tears weren't real. Maybe they were just the tools he'd learned to use, the same way I once used prayers to survive. The next morning, I called him. He didn't pick up. I called again. Still nothing. By noon, I drove to his house. His wife opened the door, startled to see. "Mom?" she said softly. "What's wrong?" "Where is he?" I asked. My voice came out harsher than I meant. She hesitated. "He's out running errands." I stepped inside anyway. My chest was tight, my breath uneven. When he walked in and saw me standing there, his face went pale. "Mom!" I cut him off. "You tried to steal from me." He blinked fast. "No, I didn't." "Don't you dare lie to me," I said, my voice shaking. "The bank called, $70,000, a transfer from our old joint account." His mouth opened, but no sound came. Then he whispered, "I was going to pay it back. I just needed to cover a debt. Mom, please." I couldn't listen anymore. "Pay it back?" I said slowly. "Do you hear yourself? That money was my life's work, my years, my health. And you treat it like pocket change." He tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. "You looked me in the eyes," I said, "and said you wanted to start over. You lied again." His wife whispered, "Oh my God, Michael, tell me it's not true." He closed his eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was desperate." I felt my heart drop. "You weren't desperate," I said. "You were entitled." He flinched at that word. Entitled. For years I had fed that entitlement. Every time I said yes when I should have said no, every time I bailed him out, every time I confused love with rescue. Not anymore. I walked to the door. "Mom, please," he said, following me. "I'll fix it. I swear I will." I stopped, turned, and looked at him one last time. "No," I said softly. "You already did." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "You fixed me," I said. "You made me realize how blind I've been. I used to think love meant giving until there was nothing left. But now I see it. Love without respect is just slavery." And I left. That evening, I drove straight to the bank again. I sat across from the same teller who'd seen me last week. I want to close the last joint account, I said. She nodded, typing quickly. Would you like to move the balance into a personal account? I looked at her, and for the first time, I smiled. No, I'd like to withdraw it. She hesitated. All of it? All of it, I repeated. I'm done building castles for people who lock me outside the gate. When she handed me the check, I held it for a long moment. It wasn't money anymore. It was closure. Back at home, I made myself tea and sat by the window. The sun was setting again, that golden, heavy light falling across my living room. I whispered, that's it, the cut between who I was and who I'm becoming. It hurt like hell, but it also felt clean, like pulling a thorn out after years of infection. That night, I wrote a letter, not to him, to myself. You've spent a lifetime being everything to everyone. You gave, you forgave, and you waited. But now, you choose yourself. Not in bitterness, in peace. You're allowed to let go. I folded the letter and placed it in my old jewelry box, the one I used to keep his baby teeth in. Funny how things change. 2 days later, his wife came again. Her eyes were red, her voice soft. Mom, she said, he's a mess. He feels awful. He's scared you'll never talk to him again. I sighed. He's right to be scared, but I'm not cruel. I just can't go back. She nodded slowly. He's been like this since his dad died. He doesn't know how to handle loss. Maybe he just panicked. I looked at her, and my heart softened. Not for him, but for her. I understand panic, I said. But this wasn't panic. This was a choice, and choices have consequences. She wiped her eyes. I'll tell him you said that. I nodded. Tell him I still love him, but from a distance. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the word cut. It can mean pain, but it can also mean freedom. I had cut the tie that held me captive, to guilt, to obligation, to a son who thought love was his to spend. I remembered the first time I ever cut something for him, his sandwich, when he was 5, into perfect little squares so he wouldn't choke. Now I was cutting something much bigger, and this time, it was for me. The next morning, I drove to a small community center near the lake. They were hiring a part-time receptionist, nothing fancy, but enough to keep me busy, to give me purpose again. The woman at the desk looked up as I entered. Hi, can I help you? Yes, I said, smiling nervously. I saw your ad. I'd like to apply. She handed me a form. Do you have experience? I laughed softly. Plenty, just not the kind you can put on paper. She smiled. Sometimes, that's the best kind. I filled out the form, signed my name, and handed it back. As I walked out, I realized something. I hadn't thought about my son once during that entire conversation. For the first time, I existed without him being the center of my world. That evening, he finally called. His voice was quiet. Mom, I didn't mean to hurt you. I don't know why I keep doing this. I took a breath. Because you never had to face the cost of your choices. But now you will. He started crying. I'm scared you'll never forgive me. I already forgave you, I said softly. But forgiveness isn't an invitation. It's closure. There was silence. Then he said, I guess I lost you. No, I replied. You just lost access to the parts of me that tolerated your disrespect. He whispered, I don't know how to live without your help. You'll learn, I said. I had to. And I hung up. That night, I cried again. But these tears were different. They weren't from pain. They were from release. For years, I thought being a good mother meant never saying no. But now I understood. Sometimes love has to have boundaries, or it stops being love at all. The next morning, I drove to the cabin again. The lake shimmered like glass, calm and wide. I stood by the water and said softly, "It's done." The cut was complete. As the sun rose over the lake, I realized something powerful. Cutting ties didn't mean I'd stopped loving him. It meant I'd finally started loving myself. And maybe, just maybe, one day he'd understand that too. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the same woman I once called my daughter-in-law, now the reason my home had turned into a battlefield. The echo of her words, "You don't belong here anymore," kept replaying in my head like a curse. Morning came, but peace didn't. The silence in the house was sharp. Even the ticking clock sounded louder than my heartbeat. I walked toward the kitchen, hoping maybe a cup of tea could calm me. But before I could pour it, I heard their voices, low, angry, whispering behind the closed door of my son's room. "Why is she still here?" she hissed. My son's voice, tired and trembling, replied, "Please, stop it. She's my mother." I froze. Every word cut into me. She laughed coldly. "Then take her somewhere else. I can't live like this anymore." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stood still, my hand shaking over the teapot. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the sound of my son's silence. When he finally came out, his eyes couldn't meet mine. "Ma," he said quietly, "maybe you should visit your brother for a few days." I stared at him. "A few days?" My voice trembled. "Or forever?" He didn't answer. That silence was the answer. I packed slowly, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to stop. Each fold of my sari felt like a goodbye I wasn't ready for. When I turned around, she was standing by the door, arms crossed, a faint smile on her lips. "Don't take it personally," she said. "It's just time for you to move on." Move on. Those words burned through me. I took my bag and walked out. I didn't even look back, because if I did, I knew I'd break. The wind outside was cold, the kind that steals your breath. My brother's house was an hour away, but the walk to the bus stop felt longer than any journey I'd taken in my life. I didn't cry, not yet. Tears felt like a luxury I didn't deserve anymore. But when I reached my brother's home, the dam broke. He opened the door, saw my face, and didn't ask a single question. He just said, "Come in, sister." For days I stayed quiet. I cooked, cleaned, helped around, pretending I was fine. But every night I'd sit by the window watching the lights of the city flicker and whisper to myself, "What did I do wrong?" One evening, my brother came to me. "You can't stay like this forever," he said softly. "You need to face them." His words scared me. Face them? For what? To remind them who you are. His voice had strength. Mine didn't. But something in me stirred that night, something that had been buried under pain and humiliation. The next morning I went back. My legs were weak, but my heart was firm. When I reached the gate, I saw her car parked outside. My son was loading something in the trunk. Boxes, clothes, photo frames. I stepped closer. "Are you leaving?" He jumped. "Ma, I didn't think you'd come." "Answer me," I said. "Are you leaving?" He looked away. "She wants to move to her parents' place for a while." "And you?" He hesitated. "I'll go with her. Just until things settle down." My voice cracked. "Things? You mean me?" Before he could answer, she appeared behind him, her tone sharp. "Yes, exactly. You." I felt the air leave my lungs, but I didn't back down. "You think pushing me away will bring you peace?" She smirked. "Peace comes when people know their limits." My hand trembled, but I met her eyes. "And your limit ends where my motherhood begins." Her face twisted. "Don't talk to me like that in front of my husband." "Your husband?" I whispered. "He was my son long before he was your husband." For a moment, no one spoke. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then she stepped closer, her voice cold. "If you think guilt will bring him back to you, forget it. He's not your little boy anymore." That broke something in me. Maybe not, I said quietly, but you'll never know what it means to give your whole life for someone, and then be told you're the problem. My son's eyes filled with tears. Ma, please. I turned to him. No, let me speak. You think silence will keep your home together? It won't. Every time you let her disrespect me, you lose a part of yourself. He looked helpless, torn between two worlds. I knew that pain. The pain of watching your own blood stand on the other side. I'm sorry, he whispered. I nodded. So am I. I walked past them, into the house. The rooms were colder now. My photo on the wall was gone. The cupboard where I kept my things, empty. Even my prayer beads were missing. That was when I knew. They weren't planning for me to come back. She followed me in. You see, she said, almost mocking. It's better this way. I turned to her. Better for who? For everyone, she said flatly. No more drama, no more guilt trips. I laughed softly, a sound that surprised even me. You think you've won because I walked away. But remember this. I built this home with love, not money. And love doesn't break just because someone throws it out. She frowned. You're delusional. Maybe, I said. But one day, when the love you've built on pride starts to crumble, you'll remember this face. The one you called a burden. She said nothing. My son stood there, broken, his head bowed. I picked up my bag again. This time, I said quietly, I'm not leaving because you told me to. I'm leaving because I finally see who you both are. As I stepped outside, the wind brushed my tears away. My heart was heavy, but my spirit, it was rising. I heard her voice from behind, mocking again. Where will you even go now? I turned, smiled faintly. Home. The one you can't destroy. And I walked away, not defeated, but awakened. That night, I sat by my brother's window again. The city lights seemed softer now. My brother came in, placed a hand on my shoulder, and said, You did the right thing. I nodded. It doesn't feel right yet, but maybe one day it will. He looked at me with quiet pride. That's what strength looks like. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't over. Something had shifted in my son's eyes that day. Guilt, fear, maybe regret. I didn't know what it meant, but I could feel it. The confrontation wasn't the end. It was only the moment everything truly began to fall apart. Because sometimes, before peace comes, the storm has to break everything first. After that day, everything inside me felt quieter, emptier, maybe, but calmer. I stopped waiting for the phone to ring. I stopped hoping for an apology that would never come. It had been 3 weeks since I left that house, their house, and I was learning to breathe again. My brother would often say, You're stronger than you think. But strength isn't something you feel when you're starting over at 60. It's something you fake until one day it becomes real. I began to wake up early, sweep the little courtyard, make tea for my brother, and sit outside as the sun rose. The warmth touched my face gently, as if reminding me I was still here, still alive. But sometimes, that same sunlight felt cruel, because it showed everything I'd lost. One morning as I was hanging the laundry, my brother came out holding his phone. His eyes looked worried. It's him, he said quietly. My hands froze. My son? He nodded and handed me the phone. My heart raced as I pressed it to my ear. Hello? Ma. His voice trembled. Are you okay? I closed my eyes. I had imagined this moment so many times, but now that it was here, I didn't know what to say. I'm fine, I whispered. How are you? There was silence. Then softly he said, I miss you. The words should have comforted me, but they hurt more. Do you? I asked. Or do you just miss having someone to blame? Ma, please, he said, his voice eking. Everything's a mess. She left. I sat down, my hands shaking. She left? Yes. She said she needed space. She said I was too. Tied to you. I didn't know whether to feel sad or relieved. And now you remember me? Ma, don't say that. I made mistakes, but please, come home. Home. That word used to mean love. Now it sounded like a wound. I took a deep breath. Son, you don't need me to fix your life. You need to fix yourself. He didn't speak for a while. Then he said, I understand. But can I visit you? I hesitated. Yes. Come. When I ended the call, my brother placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. You're not the same woman who left that house, he said softly. He was right. I wasn't. Something inside me had changed. Maybe I had finally stopped living for others. That evening, I made his favorite food. I told myself it didn't mean forgiveness. It just meant I was ready to face him without breaking. When he arrived, he looked thinner, older somehow. He stood at the door, holding a small bouquet of marigolds, the kind I used to plant in our garden. Ma, he said, tears in his eyes. I forced a smile. Come in. For a long time, we sat in silence. He finally said, I don't know where to start. Start with the truth, I said quietly. He looked down. I thought keeping peace meant keeping quiet. I didn't realize silence can destroy more than words ever could. My throat tightened. I kept waiting for you to speak. Every day, I hoped you'd say, Ma, this isn't right. But you didn't. I was weak, he said, tears falling. I let her control everything, my choices, my love, even my guilt. And now she's gone. I lost both of you. I sighed. You didn't lose me. You just stopped seeing me. He reached for my hand, his voice trembling. Can I come back home? I looked at him. My little boy who used to cling to my sorry, now a man lost in his own life. Home isn't the same anymore, I said softly. But you're always welcome in my heart. He began to cry. And this time, I didn't stop him. I let him hold my hand, because even though my heart was scarred, it still knew how to forgive. That night, after he left, I sat by the window again. But something was different. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was reflecting. I thought about all the years I spent serving others, cooking, cleaning, forgiving. I had forgotten what it felt like to live for me. So the next morning I made a decision. I took the small savings I had, went into town and rented a tiny room near the market. My brother was worried. You don't have to live alone, he said. But I smiled. I'm not living alone. I'm living for myself. The room was simple. One bed, one chair, and a window that looked out onto a street full of life. I started helping at a nearby women's center, teaching others how to sew. Most of them were younger women, struggling to find their place, just like I once had. One of them, a girl named Lena, asked me one day, Auntie, do you ever get tired? I smiled. Of what? Of forgiving people who don't deserve it. Her words struck deep. I looked at her and said, forgiveness isn't for them. It's for us, so we can breathe again. Weeks passed, and I began to feel lighter. I laughed more. I slept better. For the first time in years, when I looked in the mirror, I saw not just a mother, but a woman who had survived. Then one afternoon, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, I saw her, my daughter-in-law. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen. Can I come in? She asked. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. She stood in the small room looking around. I didn't expect you to live like this, she said softly. I didn't expect you to throw me out, I replied. She lowered her eyes. I was angry. I thought you wanted to control everything. I didn't understand. Understand what? How much you mattered to he. She whispered. When I left, he broke down. He hasn't been the same. I felt a strange mix of pain and pity. You both broke something that took me a lifetime to build, I said quietly. She nodded, tears falling. I came to say sorry. I looked at her, this young woman who once made me feel small in my own home. And for the first time, I didn't feel hate. I felt peace. You don't owe me an apology, I said. You owe yourself forgiveness. She looked confused. What do you mean? Someday, you'll be a mother too. You'll understand what it means to love someone so much that you forget who you are. Just remember not to let pride take that love away. She covered her face and sobbed. I wish I could undo everything. I placed a hand on her shoulder. You can't, but you can learn. After she left, I sat quietly, the room filled with a strange stillness. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel sad. I just felt free. Later that evening, my son called again. She came to see you, didn't she? Yes, I said. He sighed. She wants to come back home. Do you? I asked gently. I do, but only if you'll visit too. I smiled faintly. Maybe one day, but right now, I'm exactly where I need to be. He was silent for a moment. Then he said softly, I love you, Ma. I love you too, Beta. When the call ended, I sat by my window. The same place where my story began. The same place where I had cried, waited, hoped. But tonight, I didn't cry. I didn't wait. I simply smiled. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't someone's burden or someone's shadow. I was just me. I had lost everything I thought I needed. And in return, I found peace. The kind that comes not from getting back what's lost, but from realizing you never needed it to begin with.